Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, good morning, and good evening to everyone watching from all around the world. Here we are with the third episode of Season 4 of the CIES webinar series, which is organized by CIES, the International Center of Sport Studies. Now, these conversations are a collaborative endeavor with the FIFA Master Alumni Association, which is what brings me here today. My name's Heather O'Keefe. I'm currently logged in from Zurich, Switzerland, and I'm a FIFA Master alumni from the 21st edition, which means I graduated in 2021. Today, I currently work at FIFA as a commercial planning and strategy manager and have the privilege of serving as the president of the FIFA Master Alumni Association. Now back to the webinar. The CIES, organizer of this series, is an independent study center located in beautiful Neuchâtel, Switzerland. It provides top-level education, research, and consulting services, and you can find out more information about CIES, the CIES Football Observatory, and there are many education programs such as the FIFA Master or the FIFA CIES Executive Programs in the links in the description of this webinar. Applications for the FIFA Master are now open until January 12, 2024, so just over a month to go. For more information about the program or how to apply, please click the link in the description of this video. Now, today we're going to be doing a deep dive into OTT media services, starting with what is OTT? What does it stand for and what does it mean? We'll also talk about its opportunities, obstacles, and how a sports organization can navigate OTT to find success implementing this service. Thus, the title of today's session is Leveraging OTT Opportunities in Sport. I'm joined today by three fantastic panelists and fellow FIFA Master alumni. They're much more knowledgeable about this topic, and so they're going to be really great and give us lots of insights and knowledge throughout the next hour. So first we have Gordon Templeman. He's the Director of Commercial Operations and Communications at United World Wrestling, and he graduated from the FIFA Master in 2011. Thank you very much for joining us today, Gordon.
Hello, everyone.
Next, we have Aine Power. She's the Deputy Legal Director at the International Equestrian Federation, or FEI, and she, along with Gordon, graduated in 2011. So welcome, Aine. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Hi, Heather. Hi, everyone.
And lastly, we have Diego Compaire. He's the Director of Content and Partnerships at 11 Sports and graduated from the FIFA Master in 2009. So welcome, Diego.
Thank you. Welcome, everybody. And hello, Heather, and hi.
Awesome. So these three will be walking us through a really great panel session. We have some really interesting and exciting questions prepared to pick their brains and get all of their knowledge from them over the next hour. One last thing for me, as is custom with these sessions, the majority of our time will be dedicated to a roundtable session from our panel. But as the conversation goes on, please submit your own questions and comments, and we'll leave some time at the end to get interaction with the audience. To start with, if you could just take a moment and introduce yourself in the chat, and please add where you're joining in from today, as I'm sure we have a very global audience. Now, this has been more than enough for me, so I would like to kick it over to our panelists, and just briefly, in 1 or 2 minutes, could you please introduce yourself, your current role, and how your role professionally intersects with the world of OTT? And we'll start with Gordon, please.
Hello, everyone. Yes, just to introduce myself, I'm currently the Director of Commercial Operations and Communications at United World Wrestling, so the international governing body of wrestling that's recognized by the International Olympic Committee. Just in terms of relevancy of OTT, I headed up the launching of the UWW's OTT platform this past year during our World Championships.
Very cool. So yeah, I'm excited for your perspective on things since OTT is so new in the world of wrestling, and I think that'll be a really nice balance to Diego's and Aine's experience. But next we'll go to you, Aine, if you could have a short introduction.
Yeah, of course. So I'm the Deputy Legal Director of the International Equestrian Federation, the FEI, also recognised by the International Olympic Committee. We have 7 disciplines in total, 3 of which are in the Olympic Games and 1 Paralympic discipline as well. And so I've been here for about 10 years, and it's been an interesting period of time to work on some of the OTT projects, because maybe, as I can explain later, our OTT offering has gone through a couple of evolutions over the past 10 years. And my role, obviously, as an in-house lawyer, was to be to work with our colleagues in the commercial and IT teams about the various contracts, the rights issues, and just helping them progress as the platform evolved.
Perfect. Thank you, Anya. I think your legal perspective will be very interesting. It's not something I'm fluent in at all, so that'll be a really welcome addition to the discussion. And lastly, Diego, could you please introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure, thanks. Well, I'm Diego Compaire. I'm FIFA Master alumni of the 9th edition. I graduated in 2009. I have 15 years of experience in sports and sports media industry. I have joined MyCujoo founders in 2014. MyCujoo is a company founded by one fellow alumni, Pedro Presa. This was a pioneer OTT platform in sports, focusing sub-premium and long-tail football content. This it evolved into 11sports.com after acquisition by 11 Group. Since then, I'm director of content partnerships and operations at 11. Now has been acquired by DAZN recently this year. I also responsible for 11's provision of services to FIFA for FIFA Plus platform, specifically for the MA section, the National Associations section. For onboarding, production, and delivery and distribution of live content of these MAs into FIFA Plus. Through these 9 years of experiences, I joined MyCujoo and then 11. I have been developing a pioneer long tail and sub-premium football streaming platform. I've been responsible for acquiring rights, implementing live streaming projects for more than 1,000 football competitions worldwide with more than 200 right holders.
Yeah. Wow, that's a lot of experience, and we're very lucky to have you today. And Diego, I'm going to throw the first question right at you, and I already see someone's added in the chat, but what is OTT in a nutshell? Let's just level set with some definitions. What does OTT stand for? Let's start with that. And how is it different from just watching a game on Facebook Live or YouTube?
Sure. So OTT stands for over the top. Actually refers to delivery of content directly to the user over the internet and bypassing traditional cable or satellite TV providers. Streaming platform is a service specialized in delivering real-time or on-demand audio and video content, right? So in the broader sense, OTT can also include streaming services. But actually, OTT goes beyond that. It also includes other applications like messaging, social tools, and as long as it always delivers content to the users via the internet. When we talk about sports, and specifically when we refer to OTT in sports, generally we refer to something much more narrow, that is delivering live and on-demand video content to the users, providing consistency over the kind of content that we delivered. We specifically are oriented to a dedicated audience. We also try to enhance the user experience in a way that we can engage with that audience.
Perfect, Diego. Thank you for that definition. Gordon, Anya, anything from your experience that you would like to add to that as we get started here?
I think
I just remember
Diego
when
hit the nail
we
on the
start. Oh,
head.
sorry, Gordon.
Gordon, go ahead.
Please go ahead, Anya. Please go ahead.
Sorry. No, I just remember when we started our OTT back in 2009, how we consumed media was really different then. Because if you watch TV back in 2009, you're probably watching like cable or satellite. But now most of us are used to how we actually watch TV on our TV is actually through the internet as well. So now basically it has merged a lot. So where OTT was probably initially designed to describe something that came in over via the internet, right now, nowadays, most of our content, most of our TV content is even coming through over the internet as well. But I think we still refer to OTT as something that comes on top of those packages, or something that's more standalone from the traditional media, let's say.
Perfect. And Gordon?
Yeah, I think both really well said. I mean, I think in terms of that engaging tool and additional tools you have on digital platforms, I think those are also considered, I think, with the features that you would have with over the top, like push notifications and improving the user experience.
Okay, I think hopefully that answers the question from the chat of just what's OTT in a nutshell, and will get us at a nice foundation to move forward the rest of our discussion. And Diego, I'd like to throw it back to you, keep you in the hot seat. But as you said, lots of experience in OTT, over 9 years, one of the first employees at MyCujoo to now playing a crucial role at what FIFA Plus has to offer. Can you please just speak to that evolution and growth of OTT? Aine started touching on it already with FEI launching their TV OTT platform in 2009. But what has that growth been like throughout your career in the OTT world?
Well, absolutely. Thanks. So in 2014, when started with MyCujoo, was very little understanding and knowledge of what OTT was or live streaming was. Even especially in the sports industry, we needed to explain what streaming means. That sounds strange today, right?
Yeah.
I think things started to change by the end of 2015, 2016, particularly when with the launch of Facebook Live and Twitter Live. That was only 2 years later, right? 2016. At the beginning, also other platforms, niche platforms, if you can say, like MyCujoo in sports, but also Ustream, livestream.com, Meerkat, that were offering live streaming even before that. But the role of social media had changed drastically. So for the first time, social media was offering via live streaming a platform for, especially if we talk about sports, specifically for the non-premium sports properties, right? These properties that have never been showcased on TV, for the first time starting gaining space. And I think that the social media was the first place where the word live streaming became popular. If we talk about premium sports, I think it took a little longer because premium sports were mostly tied to traditional broadcasting, and they have all their rights sold, and they have been successfully distributed domestically and worldwide with traditional TV operators. So it took us a while for them to understand the importance of complementing OTT with traditional broadcasting. For instance, traditional broadcasting can be, depending the sports, depending the competition, inefficient to maximize reach, at least beyond the domestic level, right? So now there is a much better understanding on what is OTT, what are the benefits of OTT and live streaming, and especially there is a huge understanding of the benefits for non-premium competitions, right? If I'm referred to sub-premium, this has absolutely nothing to do with the level of sport or the kind of sports. But let's say when I refer to sub-premium, it's basically a media product that is not mature. And when I said mature, it's not mature in terms of securing enough presence on screen or has not a clear media value, or probably a sub-premium, suboptimal media or market value. That's why I call sub-premium. It's not an offense to any sport or any competition, but it's more a category when we're talking about media. So I think that now almost every stakeholder in sports understand the benefits, and I can sum up in mostly three. That is maximizing visibility and reach, generating new revenues, and generating revenues can also include indirect revenues. For instance, you get more exposure, so even your jersey sponsor gains more visibility that can translate indirectly in more revenues. And it can also help to make a sport competition on events mature over time, right? You can start maybe only via online distribution, and then suddenly you catch the attention of a broadcaster, and maybe then in the next cycle you clinch a successful media deal. So this, in my opinion, was the evolution I have seen in my experience in the last years.
Yeah, that's really interesting, especially just having to explain what streaming was from the beginning. I think we take so many of the technologies we have today for granted. And so to hear that, I mean, just that personal story of having to sell streaming and what is this, and maybe we can all reflect on technologies now that are super new and nascent, that in 10 years we're just going to be like, yeah, of course we're using them and they're beneficial to sports. And I want to now toss it over to Gordon, and your OTT journey and you, World Wrestling's is much earlier on in that journey. As you said, only recently launched the platform. So can you speak to the impetus for that change, the driver to want to implement an OTT platform, and just talk highly through what that rollout process has been?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I can transition from Diego's introduction of just kind of speaking generally of the OTT digital space, where wrestling is one of those sports that's a niche sport. So it's not on a week-to-week basis on a major broadcaster. And I think that was kind of the origins of our decision, where we were considering how can we improve the user experience, the viewing experience for our audience. So I think we initially launched a streaming platform, and I mean, I think we are kind of in a good position where we didn't have so many traditional broadcast deals in place. However, we did have some, so I would say we've kind of in a hybrid approach where we maintain some traditional broadcast deals where we maintain those revenues. But I think we kind of saw an opportunity to tap in and to also develop more of an in-house platform where we can then kind of connect more directly with our audience. So I think that's a lot kind of the premise of why we went in the direction of launching our own OTT platform. However, our OTT platform was one piece of a bigger puzzle, where we had a CRM launch. We had many other digital tools that went along with launching the OTT platform. So I think for us, it was certainly, I think, to kind of control our own destiny, establish a more direct line to our audience. And I think the great thing with having an OTT platform, we increased potentially a way to have more revenue into our sport that can be reinvested into the sport. But also, I think we have more direct control on improving the user experience. Whereas I think, if you're using some other social media platforms for your streaming, such as YouTube, I mean, it's a nice tool when you get to the masses, but you can't necessarily be as bespoke as you'd like to be. And you don't necessarily have all of the data and analytics that help you make strategic decisions based on what the user likes and what they do not like. So I think we launched a digital transformation, and OTT was a large portion of that. To be very upfront, we did want to come up with a new revenue stream for the sport. So that's kind of the premise, and I think some of the directional strategic decisions that we took to launch our own OTT platform. And we did choose our World Championships. So I think we wanted to take the opportunity of our flagship event and make as big a splash as possible. But even, I would say, it was definitely nervous, or I think there was some doubts that it would be a success at the beginning. But I think we put everything and we did all of the homework and promotion to make sure the OTT launch was a success for our World Championships.
I really like how you added there that OTT was just one part of a broader digital transformation. I think that's a great point to highlight, of if you're going to be investing in something, what is that more holistic vision that an organization should have? And I also really appreciate going, like, for the World Championships, go with a bang, big splash on a key flagship event. That's hopefully was very successful for you guys as well as an organization. Anya, I want to bring you into the conversation now. So as you touched on, FEI TV has existed since 2009. So how has that changed over the years? You already alluded to this a bit in your introduction, but how has it changed? But as well, what are the obstacles that FEI has had to overcome as it's grown and had those enhancements over the years?
Yeah, back in 2009, I think I said at the beginning, I think we were one of the first IFs to have its own OTT platform. I mean, I don't think I even got my first iPhone until 2011, so we're really going back in time now, and it probably shows you like where technology and streaming was back then. And I think since then we've been on a bit of a journey as an organization. And originally at the beginning we worked with a third party provider. It was basically like a service provider organization where we paid them a fee to set up and run our FEI TV offering. And then if there was a kind of a revenue share out of that. And then about 6 or 7 years ago, we started thinking about getting more control or ownership over the platform. And instead of just having a like service provider arrangement, having more kind of buy-in from us as an organization into the platform. So what we actually did, we entered into a strategic commercial relationship with another equestrian platform that previously would have actually been a competitor to FEI TV called Clip My Horse. It's a German company. And through this, we kind of had a novel way of doing it, whereby we acquired a shareholding in that entity, and in return, we licensed the entity our OTT rights, and then they run FEI TV. But alongside that, we have a kind of a production agreement with the same entity where we incorporate that into a new way of working, which we call FEI Media House. So basically, we almost have now like an in-house production arm, or almost in-house, since we have a stake in that company. And so that's been really mutually beneficial both for our partner and for the FEI, because we collaborate really closely on all the content that goes on the platform. They also provide streaming services to other equestrian events that otherwise we might not have access to or been able to claim the rights to. So we're actually able to deliver digital content to our fans that maybe before they would not have been able to access, or would have had to be in the country of the event to be able to access. So it's been good, and it has been challenging, I would say. I speak from a like a legal perspective, in that back in 2009 there was a very clear separation, like I mentioned at the beginning, between OTT rights and traditional media rights. Like, so when you did a deal with a mainstream linear TV company, you were just concerned about getting it on their TV, live, linear, maybe some highlights packages. And you weren't really getting so many requests for them to have the digital rights as well, for them to show on their players, etc. Because a lot of companies didn't really have that back in 2009. And now what we see is that traditional TV companies, let's call them that, they all also have their own web digital platform. So when you do a traditional media rights license agreement with them, they say, yes, we want the live linear rights to show at 4:30 on a Sunday afternoon, but we also want the digital rights live on our player as well, and we want people to be able to catch up for 7 days or 30 days, which on one hand is great in terms of exposure, but then on the other hand, you're giving content to what is potentially a competitive platform to your own OTT offering. But again, they have reach and exposure, so it's always this kind of push and pull, and it has to be very much on a case by case basis. But it does make doing big generic package media right deals a little more tricky, because you kind of need to tend to deal with each case, like I said, weigh up the pros and cons and where to push back on giving them the digital access, assess the market, etc. So it's been a good learning journey for me as a lawyer. I hadn't done much OTT media rights work before I joined, and definitely it's been interesting to see it evolve as the FEI has gone on this journey.
Great, and you're picking up as well the idea of ownership. Also spoke in his answer, and when you talk about bringing things in-house or almost in-house, having that ownership is really fascinating, and I think that's the thread that we want to keep on. Gordon, this one's for you. So if an organization is considering going down this OTT route, I mean, it's a big investment. Anya just gave like the high level points of what they had to do back in 2009. Can you just speak to how United World Wrestling considered those factors, how it came up with its clear objectives in pursuing an OTT platform? And again, maybe going back to this idea of reach versus revenue versus maturing and growing the sport, and just how did yourself and your organization weigh all of that?
Yeah, so I think it has to be calculated. And I would say not every organization is in a position to launch their own OTT platform. I would definitely, consider launching your own, but also there's turnkey solutions out there that are also available. I would say if you're just not in that evolutionary position to invest heavily. But I think we started off by just kind of internally doing an assessment, so a diagnostic of all of our audience, from our player that we had previously to people who are unique views to visiting our website, as well as kind of aggregating all of our social media audience. And I mean, it's also kind of mapping their habits and how much engagement you have from each of them. So I think from there you start to build a basis of the audience that you have that would potentially buy in, or I think be a viewer in the future on your OTT platform. So I think where you don't want to get is that you invest a significant amount and you don't have a situation where it's going to be, I think, near impossible to grow to the point where you can recoup the investment. So I think certainly a business model was needed, and I think kind of doing the homework before we launched the OTT platform was key, especially when I think you bring it to the board and you have to approve budgets. I think this was a key kind of positioning exercise. But for us, I mean, as the international governing body of wrestling, and I think we also saw an opportunity where we don't have to all be one eggs in one basket, where we can have a hybrid solution and sell our rights to some of our core markets for bigger traditional broadcast deals. But I would say for maybe some that are on the bubble, or I think where maybe our audiences aren't as big, it's an opportunity that we can develop and provide a kind of a bespoke solution for the wrestling audience there. I would say in addition, it was a strategic play as well. When you do go to the market and you're selling rights, if you have competition within that market, you normally can leverage and you can sell some of those rates at a higher rate. So what we did by creating our own TT platform is we became a competitor in the market. So I think in terms of some of the territories where we had interest, if they weren't bringing a profound or enough of an investment into our rights, we could always kind of say, look, thank you for the offer, but we have a system in place now. Tap into that fan base, and I think we can generate revenue kind of ourselves. So I think long term, you have to kind of put the factors, or I think the benefits, and outweigh the cost, the investment. And it's not always a guaranteed success, because you have to invest in promotion. And I think it changes when you come to when you're a streaming platform that's not looking to gain revenue, to one that's kind of generating and almost taking on the hat of a commercial organization. So I think those were the considerations, and I think we outweighed the benefits of the negatives or the risk. And I think that gave us the confidence to move forward in launching our own OTT platform.
Fantastic. And I really like that piece again of using the OTT platform as leverage in negotiations. If the markets maybe aren't delivering to your expectations, that goes right back to the idea of taking ownership, which for me is the continuing thread takeaway that I'm getting here. Diego, I want to bring you in. This idea of kind of revenue, which really equates to various opportunities. Oftentimes when we think of an OTT platform, we're just thinking of that benefit to the fan, that they're going to have on-demand access to their sport. Could you more broadly speak to the benefits for all of the stakeholders within an organization's ecosystem? At the beginning, you spoke on like the advertisers having more exposure. Could you just highlight? I think there's so many opportunities that we don't think of in the first instance.
Yes, absolutely. So, of course, we consider all the shareholders in this ecosystem. So we start with the right holders, right? So the objective is clear, like what we just repeated, Gordon and Aine also highlighted, reaching new audiences that not necessarily have tapped in before, new generations that maybe are cordless and they do not have a TV subscription. One important key topic is that you can gain insights via analytical data, especially if you manage and operate your own OTT. You can always use, as Gordon was explaining before, these viewership patterns, understand who watch you, how much, and how and what and how they interact also with the content. You can explore your own revenue opportunities. Can be offering the content for free, we have advertisement, or also trying pay-per-view subscription models, and you can also grow the media value of a competition of events with the possibility to go to market later. For broadcasters and networks, of course, in today's world, every single broadcaster and network, they also manage their own OTT. So from my perspective, this really widen the opportunities for them, because now they can serve live and on-demand content, programming that have never been shown on TV before, right? For instance, if they have a football league and suddenly they only have space for 5 matches per round, now with their own OTT, they can also showcase all the other matches that before were just simply in the dark. For sponsors and advertisers, OTT really broadens the audience, broadens the presence, the exposure, and that creates additional value for these stakeholders, sorry. And for clubs and teams, especially the middle size and the smaller clubs, in particularly league competitions, they can grow their own brands. Was saying before, in traditional television, only the big teams were on the screen all the time. The middle-sized teams, never there. Now, they can take this opportunity and build from there. Of course, it's not automatic. It's not that because they are now on an OTT, everything is happening. They still need to work. They need to combine their digital strategy, as Gordon was explaining. But this is part of a whole and a very important piece, that now their events, their matches, their tournaments are being aired. And for the players and athletes also, it's an opportunity. We don't just consider the superstars, but also now the athletes can be watched, they can be scouted, they can be recruited by other teams, by other clubs. They can build their own brands, right? So they can also complement their live and on-demand presence during the events with their own social media activity, branding, creating their brand and their image rights. So I think that the OTT revolutionized the whole ecosystem, and every single player, every single stakeholder has benefited from it.
That's really interesting. I like that last point too. I hadn't even thought of it, of the players and being able to be more easily scouted. And if you're in a small country, if you're not living in England or within a big country in Europe, how do you get seen? And an OTT platform would be a great way to just increase your own exposure. So thank you for that. Anya, we have a question from the audience, which I would like to ask you. So this one's from Max. So what are key considerations are crucial in negotiating and managing licensing deals to ensure a successful and sustainable OTT service?
Yeah, it's a good question, and it's probably something that's complex, and to be honest, getting more and more complex every year as broadcasters, organizing committees get more and more sophisticated and get more and more into streaming themselves, and maybe some have their own. It's in the case of organizers, some of them have their own OTT platforms as well, whereas before you could go in and kind of claim all the rights to an event if it's a, say for example, an FEI named event, like an FEI Jumping World Cup leg of one of our series. Traditionally, under our host agreement, for example, we'd go in and say, yes, we claim all the media rights to that class because we're sponsoring it, we're giving you a contribution. But more and more now, you see with organizing committees, they say, yes, but we have our own streaming platform, we have our own service, and so we would like to show it to our own audience. Similarly, with media rights holders, like I mentioned in my last contribution, they have their own platforms as well. So I think the key phrase when thinking about this and is carve out. I think that we mentioned the word carve out, I think probably 15 times every minute when we were talking about media rights license agreements in relation to OTT. And so if, for example, if we're doing a deal with a media rights licensee in Sweden for example, their domestic broadcaster, their SVT, and they want to show it on their SVT player, we need to ensure that in our license agreement with them, we have a carve out, because they will obviously want exclusivity in the Swedish market, which is normal. Most license holders, if they're paying a significant license fee, will want exclusivity. So we will say, yes, you have exclusivity, except for we want to carve out the right for FEI TV in your territory. So if there's subscribers in our territory, of course, in your territory, of course, they're going to be able to watch it on FEI TV. So I think carve outs is really important. It's something, if you forget to put in a carve out, it's a good way, a fast track to getting fired, I would say, in my job at least, because your OTT people in charge of that will not thank you for telling them that they can't show that event in that particular territory. And similarly, then for us with our OTT partner, we need to make sure that we have the appropriate carve outs in our agreements with them to say that if we have granted, for example, where in a World Cup event, we'll give the organizer the exclusivity with the organizer's host broadcaster the exclusivity within that territory for 24 hours to show it. And but we also need to say, and to show it also, to stream it live on their platform, we need to make sure that we have a back-to-back commitment in our agreement with our OTT partner that the broadcaster showing it on their platform is not a violation of the exclusivity we've granted to our partner. So it's a lot of making sure that different agreements line up back to back. It can be tricky enough at times to keep track of everything, where for like a major world championships, you have media rights deals in multiple territories. You're also going to have a complex enough hosting agreement with your organizer. Well, they will want some streaming rights, and at the same time you have your OTT agreement with either your own agreement or, in our case, with our OTT partner. And so you really need to make sure and be a bit of a legal pain in the ass about it to make sure that all those things line up, and it's easy enough to miss out something. So I'd say the key word here is probably carve outs, and then playing around with the exclusivity a bit. That can be a negotiating point where you can say to the broadcaster in the country, yes, you can show it on your player, but only on a non-exclusive basis. On your linear channel, fully agree, you can have exclusivity, but on your player is non-exclusive, and that means that we can show it on our OTT offering as well.
Wow, seems like a lot to keep track of. I'm envisioning like some massive Excel sheet with all the media rights licensees and exclusivity, and just
like
keeping track of all that. And a good note to all of our sports lawyers listening in: carve out. Remember that term. Yeah. And I guess want to piggyback on that question. So when you talk about organizing committees and flagship events, Olympics, big one every 4 years for FEI and United World Wrestling. How do you take advantage of that relationship, of that 2 weeks where everyone's paying attention and watching sports? And then, so maybe from Aine, get your perspective on the legal side of things. And then Gordon, how do you funnel all of those viewers onto an OTT platform and maintain that fan experience? So Aine, let's start with you, and then we'll go over to Gordon.
Yeah, well, from a legal side with the Olympics, it's pretty easy because we have no rights to show, obviously, any Olympic footage on our platform. So it's actually a kind of a challenge in terms of, for, every weekend out of 4 years, except for 2, you're asking people, please watch our channel, get all the top equestrian content, see all the best athletes on FEI TV. And then during the Olympic Games, which is the pinnacle, they're obviously, that footage is not there. So what you want to do, I think, is probably use the platform to drive people to where they can watch it, because it's obviously very important for the IOC how, when they measure sports performance in the Olympic Games, they want to make sure that there's eyeballs on your sport. And so I think one thing that we do, and I'm sure Gordon and wrestling, they have their own approach as well. We do a lot of like road to Paris content, building up, tracking athletes, taking their story throughout the year, their Olympic journey, so that people feel buy-in with the competitions and with the athletes, and really get that journey to Paris. And so when Paris comes around, they're really eager and motivated to watch the Olympics. I think the reality is about OTT as well is that the people who subscribe and actually pay a monthly membership, they're really your core hardcore fans. So they're probably going to be watching the games anyway, because for them it's like Christmas. But you probably want to use maybe some of your related channels, your social media channels, to maybe convert some less fanatical people and also redirect them and get them involved and interested in watching the Olympics as well.
Perfect. Yeah. And so continuing right on that thread, Gordon, how do you get those less fanatic fans who have been exposed to wrestling and bring them onto your OTT channel and turn them into more engaged fans?
Yeah, so the Olympics is just, I think, for us, a thinking outside the box exercise, where I think with what Aine mentioned is that we don't have the rights to the competition. So we cannot broadcast any of the moving images from the Olympics. So that being said, how can you kind of take advantage of the size and the magnitude of the Olympics? Especially wrestling is in a very, I think, special situation where the Olympics is the pinnacle of our sport, but we don't have the rights. So I think we have to come up with creative ways where we do a lot of road to, we do behind the scenes and documentary films in the lead up, and that we publish during the Olympics, as well as using still imagery. But I think we even come up with montages and highlight clips that I think just kind of also get people excited to watch the actual Olympic footage. And it's kind of, really activating on your social media channels. So if a non kind of audience watches wrestling for the first time in the Olympics, that is the key question. How can we grow our base? How can we hook them? So I think what we have in place during the Olympics is, I think content that's going to attract and entice them to potentially watch our World Championship, or they get a taste of the Olympics. Oh, I want to know more about this wrestler. So it really is kind of having a strategy where it's easy to access, and having clear messaging around the Olympics, where if you want to kind of extend your viewership or kind of watching wrestling after the Olympics, it's all there. But I think we take advantage of being the experts in the sport, so we can also kind of do simultaneous, let's just say commentary, kind of, casual shows where we have wrestling experts or big names within wrestling who are talking about the competition, where that might not necessarily be available on the Olympic platform. So we try to kind of do everything but air the competition ourselves, and trying to increase and bring the best experience to a wrestling audience that we have to always kind of maintain their engagement, the passionate fan, but also think, how can we bring in new audiences and maintain them in the long term?
Because maybe one of the things as well, just what Gordon said, maybe think of something as well, is you can play around a bit with the paywall, because obviously you put a lot of your live content or maybe your top premium brands or events behind the paywall, but during the Olympics, building on what Gordon said, if a star in Germany has got a gold medal in one of our disciplines for dressage, maybe we have some pre-recorded material with that person. We've already done something on them, so you can capitalize on the interest. There might be fleeting interest in that person, not make it available only to subscribers, but put it available on your channel free of charge. And then maybe you pique enough of an interest that maybe people will say, okay, actually, I'm going to subscribe. I'm going to try out the 1 month free trial and stuff like that. So I think Gordon's idea of piggybacking is a good one.
Great. Thank you both. And to our audience listening, please keep adding your own questions in the chat. We will be getting to audience questions in just a few moments. I have a few more that I'd like to round off our discussion with. So please add those soon. So staying on this thread of the fan experience and fan engagement, so you have the viewership. I think that's a huge portion. It just makes it easier for fans to be able to view their sport, the athletes they follow. But how can OTT enhance that fan engagement further? If we think of in-person events, maybe bespoke opportunities, first come, special merchandise drops. Gordon, if I could start with you, how is wrestling taking that fan experience to the next place?
Yeah, so I think we're starting with as complete coverage as possible. So kind of as I was mentioning before with Olympic content, it's kind of detailing the journey of the wrestlers. So we're taking competitions all throughout the year, kind of in the lead up to our bigger events. But it's really going on site, coming up with unique footage. So you do kind of become a little production house in the sense that if you want to, provide a premium product where you can justify a subscription, I mean, you're basing it off of live content. But I think nowadays, I mean, with so much media and multimedia out there, I think you kind of have to tell the complete story of an athlete and the journey. So I think it's also filling in the gaps from the competition footage and the live sport, which is still the value driver. But I think if you want to engage with the audience and keep their interest, I mean, I think you'll hear and like they'll cite at all of these conferences, the success of Drive to Survive, and educating audiences around a sport that they did not have a prior knowledge about, but somehow it hooks them, whether it's superficial or, because of the fashion, because of the lifestyle that the athletes live who are playing the sport. So I think you have to kind of come up with a multifaceted approach and have many layers that you can offer. So I think, once you have a paywall, you kind of have to position and think, look, what's the content that is going to really entice someone to be willing to pay for a subscription? And it's a tricky job because you kind of have to pick and choose what's a good promotional piece of content and what is the content that you're kind of leaving for the avid fan or the person who's going to pay money to subscribe to the OTT platform.
Perfect. I think I really like that point about storytelling, and especially athletes. They always have incredible stories and are going to be the best ambassadors for a sport. I think of the last Olympics, there was an American wrestler who had a great interview after winning a gold medal that was just super endearing. And then I was like, oh, I should be watching wrestling too. Let me find when the next match is on. So I think those storytellings of athletes is just, they're infectious and they're really fun to watch for anyone, the hardcore fan or the more casual. Before we get to audience questions, I have one last one for the group. And it's just, what is the future of OTT? I think generally as a technology, but as well, perhaps just for your organization, what does the future look like? Let's just leave it at the next 5 years. Nothing too crazy down the line. Diego, if we could start with you, please.
Sure. Actually, I think that what we need to discuss is the present of OTT distribution. Actually, we are already living the OTT era, and it's for sure the main source of consumption of sports for certain age groups, right? So we talk about younger generations. The main way of consuming content is via their phones, it's via secondary screens, it's via live streaming, and it's absolutely via OTT. So when we talk about the future, it's part of the present already. About media companies, I think they all understood this trend, and there is absolutely no broadcaster or network that is not considering OTT today, maybe as a secondary revenue source, but in the near future, this might overcome traditional distribution and may become the main revenue source. So there are like very successful companies like DAZN, so that is the owner of the company I work for, which is predominantly OTT, and it's a successful business doing premium sports, competing with traditional broadcasters. For right holders, especially for international governing bodies, as Gordon and Anya here represents, and also like FIFA did with FIFA Plus, they embrace OTT in a way to distribute their own competitions, especially the competitions that do not have global reach. Or, for instance, even if we talk about the World Cup last year, in certain countries, the FIFA Plus was distributing even some events that were not picked by TV. But also governing bodies, international governing bodies, could use OTT to give a service to the members, to their national associations, to offer a platform where they can distribute their domestic competitions. It's exactly what FIFA Plus is doing with this section. So I think the future, it's already the present. and I think that governing bodies that do not see this might be left behind, simply as that, regardless the sport they managed.
So the future is already here. Anya, what's next in OTT in your eyes and FEI TV?
Yeah, I think Diego touched on it a bit. Is this kind of the phrase "act global, think local," and I think the markets. It's something that we've started doing with FEI TV through our partnership with Clip My Horse. Is having subsidiaries in various companies to really kind of leverage and harness the interest in those specific countries, because tastes vary, and it's hard to say there's a typical fan, a fan who's just only a fan of the top international competitions. We find that our sport, because it's very much a lifestyle sport, it's not just a hobby that they watch a couple of times a week. They live it. They live at stables, all of that. They can't get enough content. And if there's a show happening down the road, and if it's been streamed, they will probably watch it. So that's something that we think is important, not just to focus on the top level or top tier events. And like Diego mentioned, there are many kind of lower tier events that actually have a very interesting pick up and market and interest. So I think that's interesting. I think we can't talk about the future without talking about AI, artificial intelligence. What's that going to bring to streaming? And when you see now what's happening with clipping, automated highlights, this kind of thing, I think that's probably going to fit in very well into the OTT streaming environment. In one hand, it's a bit scary. Maybe we will need less humans to run these kind of platforms. I think we'll always need talented people like Gordon and Diego, but maybe maybe Dolores can be done away with through AI, which is one possibility. But very much on the technology side of AI, I do think there's a lot of things coming in the pipeline that I think that you're going to see incorporated into OTT in the not too distant future at all, and probably some of them are already there.
Great, thank you, Anya. And Gordon, to you. So United World Wrestling just started its OTT journey, but what's next? What's coming?
Yeah, what is next? I think it's really seeing what happened with the events that we just recently launched, the OTT platform, and taking the lessons and reviewing the data. So I think that's one of the perks that you have. I think it's really accurate data that you can kind of set your strategic objectives, but also understand the trends of your audience. Where I think with the traditional broadcasting, I think a lot of those numbers that you get it's hard to really validate. I think a lot of it is estimation, where I think the digital data that you're receiving is because of the technology you have, I would even say, elevated accuracy in terms of the data that you receive. So it's kind of learning from what we've implemented already and trying to, I would say, set the odds in our favor, where we can come up with a yearly pass, because we just did a competition so far. But I think that's what the future looks like, is how can we do this 365 days a year, and how are we coming up with content to keep people engaged? So to Anya's point, using AI, so automated clipping, where, I mean, if you do launch a channel, you have to fill it. So that comes as one of the biggest challenges. But I think what's interesting is, I mean, from the past Olympics, you've seen a huge change of narrative, where it was always broadcast numbers from a traditional sense. But now I think with streaming, the advantages you get on the digital platform are the hours that can be accessible to an audience. And this is changing. And I think even the user friendliness, I mean, we've probably all watched the Olympics at some point, and you're like, what channel and where can I watch this sport? So I think with the digital technology, and I think the push notifications, and I think the bespoke that you can get down to the nitty gritty from a digital and even an OTT platform, I think you'll start to see that because people consume mostly on their mobile phones nowadays, I think you're going to see a huge transition. And I do think it's a tidal wave where people will go a lot more to digital and I think OTT platforms. The challenge is I think you have a Netflix account, you have, a Paramount Plus account. How can you consolidate some of these subscriptions where you don't feel like you're paying for a fee for every time you have an interest in watching something? So I think that's kind of how the OTT, the digital space is going to have to sort itself out so it doesn't kind of cannibalize itself from the traditional broadcasters. But I'm sure Diego might have a solution for that.
Great. Thank you, Gordon. Yeah, Diego, go ahead.
No, consolidation is actually a must. It's too much fragmented, and of course there is a limit of the amount of subscriptions someone can get. The reality that we should not think only about subscription-based platforms. There's also freemium. There's also fast channels that is based on advertisement. It's very similar to the TV experience, if you want. So at certain points, the things will also play the role. I mean, not necessarily all content needs to be behind paywalls. Actually, content that needs to grow, needs to reach new audiences, they actually need to be as free as possible. And just to add on this topic, I think that it's the new technologies that we were discussing will ease production and will put down costs, increasing the amount of content that could be, and also without detriment on the quality, right? So you probably a multi-camera event costs a lot of money. One camera solution maybe is easier, but thanks to technology, thanks to auto clipping and so on, you can put down much more down the cost and make many more events available for the user. And this will will only increase the opportunities, because not everybody is interested in watching just the top events or the top athletes, but maybe an athlete that they can connect with for different reasons.
Thank you, Diego. And we have a couple questions here from the audience. So the first one, they're all about future technologies as well. So how do virtual reality and augmented reality influence the future of OTT streaming in sports? Who wants to take that one?
Well, I can start. So
go for it, Diego.
I think that, this is more related to the device, the way you consume, right? So I was mentioning a few times the importance of understanding the patterns of consumption of younger audience. So I was reading a report the other day saying that like 40% of the youngest, the Gen Z, they don't even care about live to engage with the sport events. This is huge. Hey, 40%. Come on, it's really huge. They engage with sport content in different means, not necessarily via live. I think that especially augmenting reality, virtual reality to some extent too, also e-gaming, are ways for engaging with these new audiences and to make them part of the event, which not necessarily means to follow the live action. Right, and that's I feel that are absolutely necessary to incorporate as soon as possible, because OTT offers that. It's not like a linear experience that you are sitting in front of a screen. It's something that you normally have in your hand and you are interacting while you are watching. So these are only open up the opportunity to make these generations more present and more interested in the sports.
Thank you, Diego. Another question coming in is about Web3 technologies, such as blockchain-based content distribution. How do they impact the efficiency and security of delivering content on OTT platforms? Anyone well-suited to answer that one?
I have nightmares sometimes that there are my colleagues will come in asking me about a blockchain or a kind of contract to come up with. I have to say I'm really not enough of an expert in that area. I think it's something more really for the techie people. I'd love to be able to give an answer, but I'm out of my comfort zone on that one.
Thanks, Anya. Gordon?
I would actually have to say the same. If in terms of technology, I mean, I think right now my focus would be more on the content. I think as the principle in getting everything off the ground. But I do think these are interesting topics that I think you should have if you're looking in the long term. And I mean, I think whether it's security or different avenues that can open up doors to be successful, I think Web3 technologies. We use blockchain technology in wrestling to set our brackets. So it's kind of a means that we protect the integrity of the sport, so the brackets cannot be manually manipulated. So I'm just giving a small kind of bite size of how blockchain can be used in different capacities, even if you wouldn't imagine.
Great. And I think that also points to this idea that the technology has to serve a purpose. So Gordon, you said, content is really the focus. So how is Web3, AR, VR going to enhance that purpose? And maybe the solution isn't there yet, and that's not where the organization needs to invest. One last question here, and then we do have to wrap it up. So very briefly, what do you think is a key area of content that big sporting clubs are not capitalizing on enough? And how can they make use of OTT to solve this? So what are the misses of sport organizations and clubs?
I would say, I think to Anya's point, you're talking about carve-outs. So I think if you work with an agency or you're working with a broadcaster, their initial position is going to say, I want it all. You have to kind of say, whoa. If you gave them the rights, you would probably see that they wouldn't even air the full competition, especially in a specific territory. They might just be broadcasting athletes from that country. So I think you have to kind of be strategic with kind of giving exclusivity, and even content that from a traditional broadcast sense was not of value, like behind the scenes content. This can be recycled. This can be repurposed on social media platforms. So we have a wrestler walkout, and that probably is not, going to be the forefront of a traditional broadcast, but we can repurpose that onto our social media platforms and we can get millions of views. And that kind of helps us engage with our audience, which kind of is in full circle. If we have an engaged social media audience, we know we can kind of start to funnel those into our OTT platform or all of our other platforms. So it's kind of creating this ecosystem where you can kind of entice people, and again, people want more content, more stimulating, more dynamic content. So I think a lot of times you're almost overburdened with the content that you have, and you aren't utilizing it. So I think there's all these texts where you're kind of better use of this content and repurposing to your advantage.
Great. Thank you, Gordon. I think that's an excellent place to leave it. And a few of those things that you said go back to that first idea you brought up of controlling your own destiny. So making sure that you're carving out in the right places and getting the most bang for your buck, really, and using all of your content to tell the greatest stories and engage fans. So thank you to the three of you for all of your time. And thank you to everyone for listening. Those were some really excellent questions, very impressive. And we had people joining from all over the world. We have Kazakhstan, China, Zimbabwe, Kosovo, Spain. So really great to see the global reach of this webinar. And I think, of course, that just reflects the global nature of sport, how we're all engaged with it from all around the world. This has been a really enlightening discussion. I know I learned a lot. Hopefully everyone else listening learned a lot. Hopefully our panelists were able to learn from each other. Definitely a conversation that we could continue if we had more time, but unfortunately we are already over. Now, if you enjoyed this session, I encourage you to review the previous 3 seasons of the CIES webinar series, where we speak about a variety of different sporting topics, and many of these webinar sessions feature more FIFA Master alumni, which, if you're interested, the FIFA Master is accepting applications from now until January 12th, 2024. So you've got about 6 weeks to put in your application. For more information about the program and how to apply, please click the link in the description of this video. And with that, I want to thank everyone wish everyone a great rest of your day, evening, or if you're just waking up. A big thank you once again to our very knowledgeable, very fantastic panelists, Gordon, Anya, and Diego. You guys have been fantastic. So thank you so much. And I hope to see everyone again soon.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Bye,
Congrats
everyone.
to the panelists, and thank you, everybody.